coming up on Wrestling Life.
I think Razor Ramon was a great worker. You know, he was a good wrestler. He was a good worker in the ring. Like most of the big guys are just one or two moves, stiff, this and that. But he was, I think, different. And yeah, I remember that match. And I recently went back and watched that match again. I mean, it was surprising how early he was put into that picture. And if he had won it, it would have been a big shocker. But like, yeah, it wouldn't be a shocker to me. I'm like, this guy, he looks like the champion. He could have beaten Brett there on that night.
This is Wrestling Life with Ben Veal, the show that celebrates wrestling's past, present, and future with real talk from real talent.
Hello, my friends. This is Wrestling Life. I'm Ben Veal, and today we're back for another Gone Too Soon celebration of a wrestling great who we sorely, sorely miss. Today, I'm so excited for this one. He is the bad guy. He is oozing machismo. He is an outsider. He is the one and only Razor Ramon, Scott Hall. And joining me to dissect his incredible career and wrestling life is the one, the only, the People's Champion, the People's Broker. It's Mr. Ash Ajaz.
Hey, yo. You know who I am, and you know why I'm here. I changed it. Hey, Ben, how you doing?
I thought I want you to do the entire episode like that with toothpick in mouth.
Oh, we can do that. All right, I'll just put it up here.
Yeah.
What he used to do, and then I'll just flick it at the end or something like that. I don't know.
Do you know what? I always thought we're going to talk about Scott Hall's many skills, but his ability to talk with a toothpick just hanging out of his mouth, that's first class.
So, you know, I was practicing this, right? As a kid, even, you know, we practiced that. I was always so worried I'm going to swallow it and choke on it. I was like, okay, how do I do this?
I wonder how many kids did that back in the 90s.
I've got some stories. So, you know, you'll get to hear some stories, you know, and I'm sure you have some too.
Absolutely. Well, I was saying before we started recording, I mean, I remember, you know, hearing of Scott's death in 2022, and that was a really, really hard one. I remember being so hit by that because, I mean, as wrestling fans, especially of the 90s, we get I think we've almost got quite immune to the amount of deaths that we've experienced with our heroes. Yeah. But Scott Hall was one of the guys that really felt like he'd turned everything around, and we'd all followed the resurrection of Scott Hall. We'd seen the darkest days and we'd seen what he'd become. And to lose him when he seemed so healthy and well, and it was tragic. But I know for you, this is a very special one because I know you've got a very, very special Scott Hall memory to share.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, I always just called him Razor Ramon because for me, when I first, as a kid, was following wrestling or really started getting into wrestling, he was the man. So that's why I've always called him Razor Ramon, even though people called him Scott Hall. To me, he was always Razor Ramon. And I felt so lucky that I got to meet him just a few years before he passed away. And this is a really interesting story. So this was, I believe, in 2019. There was a big event for the love of wrestling. Shout out to those guys. They put on some amazing events. And I was just sitting, I hadn't known about this event or anything like that. And I was just sitting at home and something popped up, I think, on Facebook. Literally, it was 3-4 days before it was announced that Razor Ramon, Scott Hall will be coming to this event. And I was like, oh my God, I got to do this. Even though it was in Liverpool, I would have to wake up. I was like, you know what? I got to meet him. You never know, right? And I am so glad I made, you know, the journey. I got to go meet him. People say don't meet your heroes, but I'm glad I met him. And and then to hear then after him passing a few years later, especially because he was so well, it hit me really hard. You know, it was a really sad moment for me.
What was that like that day meeting him?
Oh, I was like just so excited meeting him. Just queuing up, And then as you kind of walk around, you see him and you see him. Yeah, the bad guy. I mean, he was like dressed as Scarface, I think, that day in his and then with the toothpick, and you go and you meet him. I mean, just everything you kind of imagine. I mean, Kevin Nash was sitting in the corner, basically in the same room where we were. So it was amazing. Lovely guy. Yeah, just like how you kind of imagine it. It was amazing.
And the thing is, I mean, as wrestling fans, I mean, we may grow up, we may have families, we may get grey hair, but we always still remain those little boys and girls that watched wrestling. And I remember a couple of years back when I interviewed Matt Cardona for my Good Journey show, and Matt, I remember the smile on his face when he was recounting posing with Scott with his Intercontinental title, like minutes after he'd just won at WrestleMania 32 in the ladder match, because he had a photo of him as I think about a 10-year-old boy with Razor Ramon and the title, and he was saying about how amazing it was to be able to go full circle and to have Scott Hall hold the title that he made famous. And for me, I mean, Razor Ramon is, a quintessential Intercontinental champion. When I think of that title, he is in the top 3 guys that immediately come to my head. What was your first memory of Razor Ramon as a kid?
My first memory of Razor Ramon was just seeing those promo videos before his arrival. Oh man, it was just amazing. I think on the last episode we talked about the promo videos of Mr. Perfect.
Yeah.
But this was different. And at the time, obviously, as kids, we didn't know about Scarface. Like, my parents wouldn't have let me watch that movie. I didn't watch it.
That's good parenting.
Yeah. So we didn't know, right? That's how the character was inspired. But then seeing him, pulling up in that long, that big car, cutting that promo, or, walking down the street at the fruit vendor. The restaurant one is my favorite. The one when he goes to eat and the guy asks him for the bill. So that was my first memory of Razor Ramon. And he's like, oh, Razor Ramon is coming to WWE. And I'm like, man, who is this guy? Because we remember in those days, like early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, they were larger than life characters. They were built that way. And each person had a very unique character. And this is what it was. So it was just like the anticipation. Oh my God. It was him. And then seeing him debut, seeing him coming to the ring, obviously toothpick and just, the razor's edge. Never seen anything like that before. So yeah, it was, that was my childhood, I would say. That's what got me into wrestling. And for me, Razor Ramon was the man.
And what's fascinating about that, because we are 2 guys who were very much schooled on early 90s WWF, and then we've had to retrospectively learn a lot of the history.
Yeah.
So we're introduced to this character who seems incredibly original in 1992. It blows our minds. Little do we know that character has already been in mainstream American wrestling for a good solid year as the Diamond Stud. Yeah, relatively high profile role in WCW, managed by Diamond Dallas Page. Very, very, very similar. Fascinated in how much the lawsuits and everything would change the game a few years later in Monday Night Wars. So similar, Diamond Stud and Razor Ramon, and that passed us all by at the time. We had to learn, but before that, if I just rewind a little bit, so just to kind of go back to his early life. Born in 1958 in Maryland, USA. Moves around a lot as a child with a military background. Scott begins training for wrestling in the mid-1980s and debuts for Championship Wrestling from Florida in 1984, the ring name Starship Coyote, which I still think is one of the greatest ring names of all time.
Who came up with that? That's just I've never heard anything like that before.
Chili McFreeze, it's right up there. But then he has runs in AWA, so teams with Kurt Hennig. This is a very, very different looking Scott Hall. You go back to those photos from the AWA, there he is, Tom Selleck style of his tash. Looks incredible.
Big mustache, handles. Yeah.
Huge dude. And also has a brief stint with New Japan before heading to WCW. Now, during this time, goes through some very tumultuous personal times, all of which are chronicled in the excellent Scott Hall documentary. I'm not going to recount that all now because I'm pretty sure anyone that's listening to this today has seen that. If they haven't, check it out on WWE's channels because it's incredible. But it's a miracle, really, that he ever made it to major wrestling, given what he went through.
Yes.
By the time we see him, it's 1992. It's August 1992. So whilst the world is focused on SummerSlam, and here we are in Wembley Stadium, there's this incredible character that's bubbling under the surface, and just, as you say, with these vignettes starting to be seen, very, very, very quickly rushed into a main event level. So I think some of that, I would imagine, is because of all the changes that were happening at the WWF at the time. So very swiftly we lose Ultimate Warrior and the British Bulldog in various kind of scandals and situations that happen there. So they're both out of the company heading into Survivor Series. That flips the entire card on its head. And as we talked about in our last episode, with some beautiful dovetailing here, we talked about Mr. Perfect last time, coming back from injury to take the vacant spot of the Ultimate Warrior. Well, who's his opponent? Ric Flair and the bad guy.
Razor Ramon,
So massive spot. You think this guy has literally just debuted. He's not on. This is the times when we've got once every 3 months as a pay-per-view. SummerSlam 1992 is not a part of that. 3 months later, he is in the main event of the show.
But, I'm not surprised because the dude looked like $1 million, right? When he walked down the ring, when you heard those screeching, tires, okay, something's about to happen now, right? And then you see him walk out with all the gold and, just a very different dude. Looked like $1 million. To me, he looked like a world champion from day one. Still baffles me to this day how he was never world champion. Another one of the guys, So I'm not surprised he was put into it. And also being in the right place at the right time, luck plays a big part in the industry. So I think, the dude was $1 million. And I think that's why he was put into that picture straight away.
Well, stick with us for about 10 minutes because I think we're going to get onto exactly why he wasn't a world champion. But before we get to that, January 1993, he may not become world champion, but he is well and truly in the mix because he goes up against Bret Hitman Hart in an absolute belter of a match at Royal Rumble 93. More than holds his own. Bret, as Bret has always done, makes him look like a star, gives him so much as the champion. Tremendous match. And what a first outing for the bad guy.
Exactly. And especially, traditionally big guys, they have a very basic move set and they're, perform a certain level. I think Razor Ramon was a great worker. He was a good wrestler. He was a good worker in the ring. Like most of the big guys are just one or two moves, stiff, this and that. But he was, I think, different. And I remember that match. And I recently went back and watched that match again. Great match. I mean, it was surprising how early he was put into that picture. And who knew? I mean, if he had won it, it would have been a big shocker. But it wouldn't be a shocker to me. I'm like, this guy, he looks like the champion. He could have beaten Bret there on that night.
It's interesting because you say he's a big guy because he is, but he's a different build. So it's little wonder that Damian Priest emulated him so much and has since incorporated so much of Razor Ramon into his style and his moveset because he's a big guy at 6'5", but he's a nimble guy. He doesn't come across like a big giant of a man. He's a fast mover and really genuinely the total package, I think, Scott Hall in so many ways. WrestleMania 9 is his first WrestleMania. Of course, the infamous show in Caesar's Palace. We touched upon that when we were talking about Kurt Hennig. And this feels a little bit like WWF dartboard booking, as in just literally, who have we got on the card? Because we get Razor Ramon versus Bob Backlund.
I wouldn't have... You know what it seemed like, when you play a video game and you're just random... What?
Yep.
So, those random matches that come up, I bet it was one of those.
Yep. And it's a nothing match. Like so much of WrestleMania 9, it's getting the guys on the card. Quick win for Razor. I mean, to be fair, he is beating one of the longest tenured WWF heavyweight
WF.
champions of all time in Mr. Bob Backlund. But at this point, it's a weird one. But he's on the card. He's on WrestleMania, and we then move into King of the Ring 1993, the masterclass of Bret Hitman Hart. You know, one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time. Of course, I'm very biased being a Bret guy, but Razor has a big role to play in that storyline as well. There is an argument to say that Razor Ramon would have been an excellent choice for that King of the Ring, but obviously it's Bret's night.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that King of the Ring. I love that tournament, and we talked about it a bit on the last episode. We used to love those one night tournaments that don't exist anymore, and kind of King of the Ring lost its luster and importance after those few years. Maybe after Owen was the King of the Ring. After that, I mean, King of the Ring to me didn't mean anything. So yeah, that tournament I remember, was awesome, and Bret was Bret. But yeah, it was a great tournament and great outing for Razor as well.
And then we move into SummerSlam, and he's got Ted DiBiase in what would actually be Ted's farewell match with the company, which is a fascinating piece of kind of history. Think how long that Ted was part of wrestling and part of WWE, and actually his final outing, to the best of my knowledge, is with Scott Hall, Razor Ramon.
Yeah, I mean again, Ted DiBiase, another guy, never world champion, even though he bought the belt once. He got it from Andre.
Well, do you know what? Fun fact, I have a beautiful replica winged eagle in another part of my studio here. It's signed by 3 people. It's signed by Bret Hitman Hart. It's signed by Sergeant Slaughter. And it's signed by Ted DiBiase. When I met Ted last year, I said to him, in my eyes, you were WWF champion. I don't care what Jack Tunney has to say about it. You were champion and you're signed in my belt. And he was thrilled. And yeah, to me, I mean, he is an uncrowned WWF champion. I'm very happy to have his signature on that belt.
But look at it this way, right? We're talking about Razor. Look at it from his debut in 92 to 93, just within a space of 12 months. The talent he was involved with. He was involved with Ric Flair, Mr. Perfect, went up against Bret Hart, King of the Ring, and now having the match with Ted DiBiase just shows his caliber for the first 12 months. That's got to be like the rookie of the year contender, like one of the best runs for a rookie. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. And I think maybe the reason it's not in that conversation was because he was a rookie in the WWF, but not a rookie in the business. So we always talk about the first banner years of Shawn Michaels, or Kevin Nash gets talked a lot as well for his first year and all the gold that he achieved. But I think Scott Hall is overlooked because he'd done a lot beforehand.
Yeah.
But for a year one in the WWF, absolutely outstanding. And it culminates in, I believe it's October 93, when the Intercontinental title has to be vacated by the Heartbreak Kid. Yes. And in that wonderful fashion, which I adored as a kid, but it really is the essence of lazy booking, to determine a new champion, we have a battle royal, but with a twist, because the final 2 people in the battle royal then have a one-on-one match, which I think is a really, really great twist on it, which I haven't really seen since, I don't think.
Yeah,
but we end up with, really cool.
That was really cool, because that was a bit of a new thing for me, because we've always known like Royal Rumble, that okay, you just eliminate the last guy and that's it. But that was an interesting twist that, he'd have to go up against the model, Rick Martel.
Yeah.
And that was really, really interesting, I thought.
And if you're talking, again, we're talking about the pedigree of people he faced. Well, again, model Rick Martel, what an incredible worker, so much talent, so much tenure with the company. Yeah. So for his first Intercontinental title win to be over Rick Martel is huge. And I remember him winning the title like it was yesterday. And the sign of Razor Ramon with Intercontinental title gold just looked right. But of course, the other thing we've glossed over a little bit here is he's turned babyface during this time. But it was one of those very subtle babyface turns where it was just like, we talk a lot about the anti-hero and Stone Cold Steve Austin, how he invented that. But the reality is, Razor Ramon was a quintessential wrestling anti-hero. He didn't really change. He was still the bad guy. He was still cocky and arrogant and everything that we were booing him for. But along the way, he became undeniable, and you just had to cheer him.
I mean, same as, thinking back at Scarface now, he was an anti-hero. He wasn't the good guy by any means. He did some wrong stuff, but, so it was kind of like that same thing that kind of Razor probably used and kind of the way he kind of structured his character. Yeah. So yeah, that was quite interesting how he turned babyface, and then in that Intercontinental title match, he was the babyface, and crowd was behind this guy.
Yeah,
they were really rooting for him against the model.
So this all leads us to a certain match, which is just over here.
Yes.
And for me, I think we may have a difference of opinion. I'm very curious to hear what your favourite is. But for me, this is my favourite Scott Hall match. WrestleMania 10, March 20th, 1994, Madison Square Garden. The ladder match for the undisputed Intercontinental title. And the reason it's undisputed is because Shawn Michaels is forced to vacate the Intercontinental title because he hasn't defended it for long enough. He used to be this wonderful WWF rule, but under the decree of Jack Tunney, that if you didn't defend your belt within 30 days, then you would vacate it. If Jack Tunney was still in power, then Roman Reigns' WWE Championship reign would have been considerably shorter than 1,300 days. Shawn comes back, and obviously he's livid because he's the champion. No one's beaten him. He's still the champion, and he's still got the belt. But also Razor's the belt, got the championship, and there's only one way to settle that, and that is a ladder match at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, that was epic. I mean, WrestleMania 10 overall, what an amazing WrestleMania that was. It's in one of my top 5, I would say, WrestleMania 10.
Is that because of Doink and Dink versus Bam Bam and Lita?
Yeah, definitely. That not even gets a half star, but still a good card. Good card. I mean, that match, it was the match of the night. That was the match. And for me, watching that, we didn't know ladder matches. So that was like a new concept. And what a match. It was just a roller coaster. And obviously, Shawn Michaels, as he's known for overselling, it worked in this match, actually. I still remember Razor walking under the ladder as he's coming, and they're like, "Oh, that's a bad omen." And that was I don't know what to say about that match. That was just amazing match.
What's incredible about it, because it's really the first time that a WWF audience sees a ladder match on a main stage. So the only time we'd really seen it had been Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, 92 for the IC title. This was a concept that Bret brought in, I believe, from Stampede. I'm sure if I'm incorrect about that, there'll be comments in the YouTube.
Yeah,
but we'll say
please let us know. Please prove Ben wrong.
Absolutely. But I know that this was a concept that Bret was looking to bring onto a grand stage, but it ends up being Shawn and Razor that had that first big match at WrestleMania. Ironically, on the same night that Bret has an absolute masterclass with Owen. So, when we talk about WrestleMania classics, what a pair of matches on that night. But the Shawn Michaels Razor Ramon match is just absolutely stunning, because when you look back at it, and we've got so kind of dazed with ladder matches and TLC matches and every kind of gimmick under the sun now, when you watch that match back, they use that ladder sporadically, but they use it so beautifully to tell the story. It takes a while to get into the ring. When it does, it's used as a prop more than a weapon. It's used so innovatively, and the energy and the speed that they both bring. I mean, those two just matched each other perfectly.
I mean, here, Ben, we're talking about two of the greatest in the wrestling history. Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels, and it was amazing storytelling with the ladder. It was all about the ladder, like getting the ladder in. These days, 2 minutes in the match, bam, ladder. The one ladder, two, there's 20 ladders. So it's kind of like lost. So it was that lovely storytelling, the importance of that ladder and setting it up and all that type of stuff. And I must have watched this match a million times, and I'll tell you a quick story. I think one time this was, I think when I was in university, I rented the WrestleMania 10 tape and I was watching it. My roommate wasn't into wrestling, and he was doing something, and he starts watching it with me. He goes, "Man, that's a good match." I'm like, "Dude, you don't even watch wrestling." He goes, "Yeah, but that's amazing." So that's what that match was. It was amazing.
Title Run Toys Series 1. Dangerous Danny Davis. Wrath. Juventud Guerrera. Ernest the Cat Miller. And Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. Coming to the ring soon.
It was, and a past guest of the show, Johnny Storm, who's recently brought out his autobiography. Johnny was in the ring. He was fourth row ringside in Madison Square Garden at WrestleMania 10, and Johnny was known to lots of the guys as Little Razor because he modelled himself so much on Razor Ramon, and lots of the boys knew him in the back as Little Razor. And yeah, just an incredible match, incredible finish. I mean, I still think one of the greatest finishes of all time. I mean, Shawn Michaels' ability to wrap himself up in those ropes until the very, very last minute. And then the iconic shot of the bad guy kind of there with both belts held aloft. I mean, if you want to talk about a star-making moment, that was it. Absolutely incredible.
I mean, HBK always used to do that. He always used to get wrapped up or hanging upside down. I think he lost quite a few matches that way. If I remember, I think he lost like a cage match with Brett when he kind of got wrapped up. But the thing that scared me in that match, when Razor takes the two belts and he almost like falls down from the top of the ladder. I'm like, how the hell did he not break his ankle or something like that? So that was quite scary for me when I saw that.
Yeah, it's just amazing. And yeah, I guess it's that sheer exhaustion from putting it all. And I know the match went over quite considerably, and I believe the match led to the 8-man tag match being cut from the show entirely because they went over their time. But when you're having a match like that, it's very hard to justify to say you can't go over your time.
I mean, this podcast is about the career of Razor Ramon, but I feel we can do a whole podcast about this one match. That's how great it was.
Yeah, I'm up for that sometime. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's not their only ladder match because I'm going to jump ahead and we'll do a bit of kind of creative moving around. But SummerSlam 1995, the two have a rematch. And by this point, Razor's been champion a few times. Shawn is now a babyface, so it's a very different dynamic. Shawn is very much on the massive upward trajectory towards becoming world champion. And once again, they steal the show. The difference being that the show they steal is one of the worst SummerSlams in history. So,
I was going to say, it wasn't that hard to steal.
And I think because
they could have just put on this one match on that card. And
I mean, I'm not throwing shade on King Mabel, but they've been better world championship contenders, I would say.
Yeah, trying to do a power bomb on King Mabel, even Diesel.
Brutal. But yeah, I mean, great, another great match. I mean, much more of a technically sound, kind of slower paced match from the original.
Yeah.
Very hard to, you can't, that whole phrase of kind of lightning in a bottle, it's WrestleMania 10 was magic, but
yeah,
very, very solid match. Well worth going out of your way to watch again. I loved it, but it's nothing compared to the original.
No, I didn't enjoy it as much. I remember that SummerSlam 95, and yeah, pretty terrible card. But yeah, that was the match. But again, I think this is what happens. Like, you'll always compare it to the original, right? Anything that is a remake, when we look at the movies or whatever, you always compare it to the original. I just don't think it could top the original. It's still a good match, don't get me wrong, given the night and the other matches that they were. But yeah, couldn't top the first one in my book.
Now, we were talking earlier about why Razor was never world champion, and this is one of those curious times because in 1995, when there was such a real dearth of kind of creative, and it was definitely a really low ebb for the WWF programming, Razor is a babyface at the same time that you've got a babyface Big Daddy called Diesel as world champion. Now, Diesel, going back to WrestleMania 10, Diesel's there as Shawn Michaels' enforcer. A few months later, Diesel wins his first ever Intercontinental title over Razor Ramon.
Yeah, on Raw. Yeah.
And the trajectory begins very, very quickly after that to world champion. I can't help but feeling that if Razor was back to being a heel, then in 1995, we could have had some incredible matches between Diesel and Razor, where it would have been fully conceivable, given their friendship and the clique, to have seen a title change happen and to have seen a heel Razor Ramon become world champion.
95 was, is considered one of the worst years, I think, in the history of WWF, WWE. And I think they were close to closing their doors because WCW was absolutely destroying them. And obviously all the talent had left to go to WCW.
Well, they hadn't by this point. This is the crazy thing. So this is still, WCW hadn't got to that stage. That's a year later. So 1995, this is when WWF really creates the opening for WCW to do that, because for whatever reason, the wheels just come off in 95. And creatively, I mean, you only have to watch the 1995 Royal Rumble. It was just dreadful.
It was dreadful.
The lack of talent. And that goes through from WrestleMania 11, King of the Ring 95, the whole year until we get
WrestleMania 11
95. Until finally we're back at Survivor Series 95 and we're back in the right track with Brett and Diesel.
Yeah.
It's a tough year. And a lot of, Kevin Nash gets a lot of slack for potentially not being a high drawing champion, but look what he had to work with during that time. Exactly.
I mean, what else did they have? I mean, I remember that WrestleMania 11. I mean, the main event. I mean, I really don't know why wouldn't you put your world champion as the main event and put like an ex-football NFL player, as a main event.
Well, 30 years later, why would you put Travis Scott in the main event of WrestleMania? So some things change a lot and some things never change when it comes to professional wrestling and mainstream attention.
Yeah, well, that's one thing that I didn't. So WrestleMania, people always say was their favorite, pay-per-view or event and stuff. That's one of the reasons I kind of didn't like WrestleManias, because it was just, they tried to make it too pop culture at times. Yeah. And that did a lot of disservice to the guys. The guys who could have had the spot, who deserved a spot at WrestleMania, didn't, because they lost out to these celebrities who showed up on the night and some who didn't show up. Won't mention them. But yeah, the 95, going back to that 95, you're right. Everyone is a babyface. Diesel, Razor Ramon, Shawn Michaels. For a good babyface, you need a good heel. So I don't even remember who the heels were. I think, I don't remember. Undertaker, I think, was also a babyface. I think.
Yeah, I mean, Diesel's run. He had Shawn Michaels, Sid, Mabel, and then they turned Davey Boy Smith.
Yeah, so I can't even remember who the biggest heel was in those days. Maybe Mabel. Honestly,
Mabel and Sid, really.
Hunter Hearst Helmsley. I think it was probably just Davey. They didn't have any heels.
So you think there's a big opportunity for Razor for a lot of 95. He's kind of treading water, really. He's kind of trading the Intercontinental Championship back and forth with Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Now, the two did have great chemistry, and I loved the Double J character.
Yeah.
But I still look back on this time now and think, wow, like you were really lacking like a proven mainstream main event star.
Yeah.
Razor Ramon had it, and he had it in spades. And I do wonder retrospectively why he was kept a babyface for so long, when if they'd managed to turn him heel successfully, what we could have had. But we don't get it. And I think so much of that leads to where we end up getting to with Scott Hall. So despite being the first ever 4-time WWF Intercontinental Champion, and despite being a big part of the clique and having a lot of backstage influence with Vince McMahon, he makes the decision to leave. He makes the decision, he gives his notice, talks about, within that it's reported that a lot of that was based on the schedule, and that the schedule was too much for him, and that WCW was presenting a lighter schedule and more money. But also there's creative differences. And I believe one of the issues was the program he was booked into with Gold Dust and some of the overtones of that character at the time. And for whatever reason, Scott Hall makes the decision to leave the WWF. and it's no great secret, he has swapped out at WrestleMania 12 for Roddy Piper. We have the curtain call in May 1996, the infamous curtain call where people say that kayfabe died. Read into that what you will. I think everyone's got a very different opinion of where kayfabe was in 1996 and how much people still believed. But there's this very, immortalized night, which in many ways has been blown out of all proportion, where Shawn Michaels and Hunter Hearst Helmsley come into the ring in Madison Square Garden and thank their friends Kevin Nash and Scott Hall for all of their years of friendship in the WWF. Where do you land on the curtain call?
The curtain call to me, in those days, the way it was presented, it was considered, oh my God, what the heck? They've ruined the business. They've ruined kayfabe, Now in hindsight, it was a house show, so it wasn't even like on TV or anything. It was like after the cameras were rolling, but I think they showed the footage and stuff like that. I think it was a game changer in the industry. We were coming into this era. We had moved on from the era of eating your vitamins and saying your prayers long time. We were kind of coming into this reality era of mid-90s. I think it was revolutionary because I think that gave rise to the Attitude Era, which we all love and adore and remember, even though some of it is really hard to watch now as I've grown up going back. So I think it was amazing. But I want to just touch up on something just prior to that and what could have led to it. So you talked about his booking with Goldust, him losing the Intercontinental title at Royal Rumble with Goldust. And then the way he was booked, obviously he was on his way out, and obviously Vince always buries the talent when they're on the way out. I still remember he was put into this crybaby match, if you remember, with 1-2-3 Kid. 1-2-3 Kid was a heel. Razor Ramon was a face. He put into this crybaby match, and the stipulation was the loser has to put a diaper on or something like that. And Razor lost that match. And to me, I was so angry and upset as a kid. I was like, what the hell? I was a crybaby, I think, that night.
Didn't 1-2-3 Kid lose that? I have vivid memories of...
I remember. You know what? We're going to have to go back and check.
1-2-3 Kid's definitely the one that ends up in a diaper, whoever loses it, because I remember he's put in it and he has a big kind of crybaby fit in the middle of the ring. So even if he lost the match, he definitely doesn't end up in a diaper, because I remember there's talcum powder involved, and there's that's one of my enduring memories of '95 is a 1-2-3 Kid in a nappy.
And then after that, as you said, he got taken out from WrestleMania, and just the way he got booked in those last 3 months, because obviously he served his notice, he's on his way out. It was a really sad time for me. All of a sudden, two of my favorites, Razor and Diesel, I used to like Diesel as well, leaving and disappearing, and, the way they were treated. Diesel was also kind of, buried on the way out, losing those matches to Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker and all that, turning heel all of a sudden. So yeah, going back to the curtain call, I think it was a game changer of a time that kind of pulled the curtain back. It was like, okay, let us show you what the real stuff is.
Do you think it would have had the same enduring impact if it had been anywhere other than Madison Square Garden? Because despite being on a house show, it's MSG. That is WWF holy ground, isn't it? Where all of the greats have made their mark. And I think for wrestling loyalists, that was possibly why it was seen as such a kind of slap to the face, was how dare they do this in the sacred ground of Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, maybe that's why they did it. Obviously, Shawn Michaels, as we've heard stories, he had a lot of say. He was obviously quite active backstage. So, and even when that curtain call happened, obviously Razor and Diesel leave. The two guys left, and I think Sean Waltman leaves soon after. The two guys left in the company from that curtain call are Triple H and HBK. Triple H, HBK, because of his relationship with Vince, goes unpunished. It was Triple H who got the punishment, being put in the hogwash match and all that stuff he was having to go through and really got, made a fool of, the Triple H had to price. So, good on him. The dude runs the company now, man. So he's paid his dues many times over.
Yeah, he's come out of it good in the end. So I'm going to jump to the shocking debut, WCW. So this is a time when you might need your two-pack in again. Your toothpick in, rather. Did I say two-pack? May 27th, 1996. Scott Hall turns up unannounced in the middle of a WCW Nitro show, wearing street clothes, still recognisable as Razor Ramon, with his little slicked hair and his toothpick, makes his way into the ring, and he has a few lines to say, doesn't he?
You know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here. That's the main line, but he also keep saying the Nacho Man. I remember that.
Brilliant, yeah.
That was a big shocker. He looked a lot leaner, I think, when he came. And everybody's like, what the hell? Because it was a very new thing, wasn't it? Like someone just jumping in from the crowd, getting in the ring. But that was awesome.
Yeah, we'd seen a few. I mean, WWE had already set the precedent with Lex Luger turning up on the first Nitro, and then Medusa dropping the women's championship into the bin. So we were starting to see that, but this was like, wow! It was not known widely beyond the dirt sheets that he'd left WCW, that he'd left the WWF. So suddenly Razor Ramon is on there on WCW, and for the next few weeks, that's the narrative. This invasion, because not long after he's joined by Kevin Nash, and they are presented as the outsiders, and it's very much looks like they have come from New York to take over Atlanta.
Yeah,
and a kind of storyline that ended up getting them in a lot of hot water, lawsuits flying around for years, and litigation around intellectual property and around them being presented as Razor Ramon and Diesel with many of the elements. What I always found ironic about that was, of course, Razor Ramon was more than a creative rip-off of Diamond Stud, which was a WCW creation. So always very fascinating, I thought, that bit of litigation. But yeah, I mean, you have these weeks and weeks where Scott and Kevin are wreaking havoc on WCW, and they're all talking about what's coming, this third man at Bash at the Beach.
Yeah.
Building this faction. We don't know who it is, but we know someone is coming. And that obviously leads to July 1996, Bash at the Beach, and the big reveal of the third man.
You're skipping over some really important events that also happened on the other channel when the fake Razor Ramon had a debut, if you remember, with fake Diesel.
That's a bit later. That was late 96.
Oh, is that a bit later? Yeah. Okay, I'm getting my dates crossed.
That was late 96, because that was a very strange kind of WWF doing this.
So Jim Ross story they did with Disgruntled and him bringing back Razor Ramon. And can you? Because he was the head of talent or something at the time.
I mean, one thing, a heel Jim Ross, brilliant. I loved that so much. It's so short-lived, but he was amazing when we just let Jim Ross loose.
Oh my God, he's a heel. By God,
brilliant. But I mean, you could only imagine how much kind of Kevin Nash and Scott Hall were tickled by fake characters of them showing up on WWF, and it just bombed. It was awful, wasn't it? Incredible what one of those two was Kane.
It just showed WWF's frustration at the time, I think, because they were struggling. Two of their biggest stars have left. Who did they got left? I think HBK had some injury issues. They haven't really built anybody else. I mean, Steve Austin was the one who was kind of slowly coming at the time. I think they had turned Brett heel as well. So it just showed sort of, I don't know, the pettiness. I don't know what the intention was with this fake Razor and fake Diesel. I wasn't happy about that.
It didn't do him any favors, even though I did think Rick Bogner did a good job as in his Razor Ramon impersonation. But there's only one Scott Hall. But if we go back to Bash at the Beach 1996, I mean, I was obviously much more of a WWF fan than WCW at the time, but I was following both products. I remember seeing this match afterwards and being stunned. I was like, I can't believe that Hulk Hogan is a bad guy, and that's the birth of the NWO. Obviously, that famous night, litter being strewn in the ring, incredible, and suddenly Scott Hall is very much a main eventer. Overnight, the NWO has become the single hottest thing in professional wrestling, and it is because of three men and that cool factor that Scott Hall and Kevin Nash brought to WCW. But it doesn't lead, and it doesn't ever lead to a main event run. So even despite his frustrations over the WWF and not getting to be the man, he never gets to be the man in WCW. What he does get to be is a 7-time world tag team championship with Kevin Nash. So the Outsiders become the most dominant team by far in WCW. And they have some incredible matches, incredible feuds. And they kind of work against this kind of, I guess, the loyalists of WCW, really, the guys that haven't turned to the black and white. As more and more people defect, you've got these guys like Sting and Lex Luger and Ric Flair and the Steiners and Harlem Heat, who are the last hope against this ultra cool band of anti-heroes. But I think he's a casualty again of the times, the sheer amount of talent, and the fact that really it was the Hulk Hogan show, and the NWO was the Hulk Hogan vehicle. And short of Scott Hall maybe turning face and branching out against the NWO, he was only ever going to get so much mileage and get lost in a shuffle. And of course, during this time, he struggles a lot with, well documented kind of substance abuse. And there are many times when he appears on WCW programming not really in a state to be there. It's hard to watch. This was at a time when it seemed like anything went in WCW, when you'd have the Giant kind of coming out there smoking a pack of cigarettes and Scott Hall kind of turning up, kind of worse for wear and stuff. And it all added to the kind of cool factor and this blurring of the lines between what was fiction and what was reality. But for me, in WCW, I would have loved to have seen Scott do so much more. And it's kind of a question of what could have been if he had been in better health, and if the company had been in better health as well towards the end. I mean, he does get a US championship run, beats Roddy Piper. He does become world TV champion as well, so he picks up a fair share of gold. But again, where you think he spent so long in that mid card in the WWF, for me, Scott Hall screamed main eventer, and we never got to see it.
Yeah. Talk about iconic moments in the sport. I mean, to me, nothing more iconic seeing the formation of the NWO, and the debris and stuff being thrown in, and Mean Gene is yelling. I should love Mean Gene. I think he was at least one of those ring announcers or interviewers, at least, who wasn't just a mic stand. He was like, he used to get upset about stuff, and used to say things. It was a proper character. Seeing that, wow. I mean, I was at the time, I was the WWF guy. Always followed WWF, no matter how bad it was. But when that happened, I started to check it out. Like, okay, let's see what happens, because this was when I was in America, and obviously Saturdays we used to have a show come on, and then I forgot the name of it, and then Thursday they started Thunder, so we could watch it on like normal TV. We didn't need cable TV for it. This was the advantage WCW had over WWF. WWF was always on cable TV, so unless you had USA Network, you couldn't see it, and I couldn't convince my parents to get cable just for WWF. So I had to watch WCW.
I wore my dad down for 6 solid years to get me Sky TV. So many years. Eventually, I had to do an awful lot of chores and things around the house when I became a teenager to finally get Sky TV. I had years where I had a good friend who would record me wrestling every week on a VHS, not to go home and watch it on tape delay, until finally in 1996, I think it was, I finally got Sky TV.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you. Shout out to all those friends and people who helped us out recording those episodes. I had a few people like that. I'll never forget you guys. My thoughts and prayers are always with you. Thank you. But yeah, that was a cool time. But again, touching to your point of main event, again, Scott Hall, Razor Ramon coming into WCW, and now it's a field full of talent because all the talent now has come into WCW. So, and obviously, unfortunately, with the his problems and Demon and the substance issues, maybe even I thought when they split later on NWO into NWO Hollywood and NWO Wolfpack. Maybe he could have gone into NWO Wolfpack and could have been the face and could have gone up against Hogan and maybe beaten Hogan and could have been the world WCW champion. But again, as you said, unfortunate events,
Where do you land on the kind of drunken gimmick that they had for a bit? Because they genuinely played it up. They genuinely played up his real life struggles and difficulties to get some creative mileage out of it.
I'm never a fan, Ben, of people, it's kayfabe. I just hate it when they try and bring real life issues into, wrestling, and it can. I don't know. I'm just not a fan of it. They did it with Jeff Hardy, if you remember, many years later. I didn't like that. But why only use a wrestler who's actually struggling with something like that? Or why present it and kind of use that story? There's enough stories they can do. I'm just not a fan of it. Then where do we draw the line? Then we can pick up something else that is going on in the world or someone else who's going through challenges. It doesn't. I'm not a fan of it. I didn't enjoy it.
No, and of course, when it comes to him making this incredible comeback years later, and with so much support from Diamond Dallas Page, we've got so much footage that we can kind of go back to about how bad things got for him. I remember, I'm not sure the dates, maybe it was 2010, 2011, when there was a very famous video that did the rounds. I think it got onto TMZ and all that kind of
broke my heart, that video.
Stuff. But yeah, the video of him stumbling around at a house show, and it's just absolutely heartbreaking because this was, as we said, like one of the absolute greats, like one of the ultimate kind of bump takers, such incredible kind of in-ring psychology, and to see the struggles that he had was heartbreaking. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit to there's a lot we could talk about with WCW, but I'm going to jump ahead to the demise of the company and the return of the NWO.
Yes.
Under a WWE umbrella.
Yeah.
Obviously in 2002, we've got to the point that there is only one show in town now. It is the Vince McMahon show, and Vince McMahon is bringing in this cancer to his own company, the NWO, in a storyline that continues to make no sense 23 years on. And Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Hulk Hogan, the original NWO, way before that group exploded and became 50 strong and 10 factions deep, or however many iterations it ended up with, we get the return of the core three in WWE. And do you remember watching No Way Out 2002 and the return?
I do, and I was like this build up. Obviously, I remember exactly when Vince McMahon announces this cancer. I think he's on this swivel chair and he turns around and it says NWO on the back of it. So it's like the cancer is coming. And you're like, whoa!
You need to do a People's Broker promo like that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that'd be something, right?
Yeah.
So I remember that No Way Out scene, and man, I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, let's see. We've seen NWO in WCW. Let's see what they're going to do in WWE. And it was interesting seeing like their interactions, even that, it was surreal to me, like seeing Hulk Hogan, Razor Ramon, and Diesel back in WWE. And I was like, whoa, we never thought that would happen. How many years later? What, 6, 7 years later? Especially like the way, the Hogan. And then seeing their interaction, especially that interaction they had backstage with The Rock. And, that was quite interesting. So I was so intrigued. But what happened afterwards, I don't know. Still enjoyed the angle when they ran over The Rock in that ambulance. So that was crazy.
I'm Mark Merrill, former WWE Intercontinental Wrestling Champion and 3-time WCW World Television Champion. I am thrilled to announce the release of my new book, Bad to Good. The inspiring story of a wrestling wild man chronicles the highs and lows of my life, both in and out of the wrestling ring. It's a powerful narrative of overcoming adversity and the importance of perseverance, no matter how tough the journey gets. Co-authored with my good friend and award-winning journalist, Ben Veal, this is a story I've long wanted to share, and I truly hope it inspires you. I hold nothing back in this book, revealing the untold truths of my extraordinary life, from my modest beginnings and my first boxing match to the struggles with addiction that almost consumed me and my evolution into the charismatic Johnny B. Bad. This book offers an insider's perspective on the world of professional wrestling and my journey as a sports entertainer. You'll read about my pivotal negotiations with Vince McMahon that led to the first ever guaranteed contract in the WWF and how that decision marked me within the locker room. I discuss the impact of my relationship with my then wife, Rena, known to fans as Sable, on my career. I also confront the darkest moments of my life, how I hit rock bottom and how that experience sparked my rebirth, leading me to become America's leading motivational school speaker, inspiring young people and transforming lives. Featuring forwards by my good friends Diamond Dallas Page and Lex Luger, along with contributions from Mick Foley, Eric Bischoff, Vince Russo, and others who shared this wild journey with me. Bad to Good is a story you don't want to miss. Head to Amazon.com or WrestlingLife.online now to pick up your copy.
Yeah, I mean, really weird night. They kind of debut and they kind of come in and do this kind of apologetic promo that they kind of say, we're the good guys, we're not here to cause trouble, very much playing against type. Then they're kind of backstage interacting with people like The Rock, but being quite sarcastic and dismissive of them at the same time. They end up showing their true colours at the end of the night, turning on Steve Austin, spray painting him. That leads to the first WrestleMania match for Scott Hall since 1995, when he fights Steve Austin at WrestleMania 18. And that was a match that reportedly Austin had a lot of heat over. That was very key to him, as they say, dropping the ball and going home. He didn't feel that was a match that befitted his status at the time, had any build, or really warranted its place on the card.
One of the things, though, I noticed when they returned at No Way Out, it still felt like it was Hogan and two of his guys with him. They never felt equals to me. They never felt like a faction, a trio. It always felt like Hogan and two of his bodyguards. It was always Hogan in the front. When now maybe this time they could have given Scott Hall the lead, or maybe Kevin Nash the lead, or something like that. And that angle, obviously, Rock and Hogan went to go have one of the historic matches at WrestleMania. I mean, one of my favorite matches. And we remember talking to Mike Chioda about it and how was it like, and I was like, wow, that must have been amazing being a referee. But yeah, that Scott Hall Stone Cold match just didn't make sense to me. Just the build, the match itself. I don't know.
Do you remember the stunner he took?
Yes, well, he took several, but there was one he took in which he properly, like he must have spoken to Shawn Michaels, I think, before the match. Hey, like, how do I sell the stunner? Like, there you go. That's how you do it. I know The Rock oversells it. We've seen it, the way he flips. So yeah, that stunner, that was awesome.
I always wondered whether he did that to throw some shade on Steve Austin, because the kind of the bump that he took was so reminiscent of when Shawn oversold famously a few years later at SummerSlam 2005 with Hulk Hogan, and it's almost so ridiculous, that bump, that it makes a mockery of the move. And I remember, Scott Hall hitting the stunner and flying back about 10 feet in the air. It just looks absolutely ridiculous, but also one of the most iconic stunner sells of all time.
I mean, that match, I was actually watching that match again recently. It came up on, and I felt sorry for Scott in that match a little bit. This is not the Razor Ramon, because I missed a lot of his WCW run. I didn't see a lot of his run in WCW. So yeah, if I could go back, I'd probably erase that Stone Cold WrestleMania match from a memory. I didn't enjoy it.
No, and that entire run, to be honest, the NWO is incredibly short-lived. They call an audible, as Mike, talked about when he was on the show. The crowd is so hot for Hogan, they know immediately that it's time to turn him face. Hall and Nash come out at the end of the match. They get beaten down like jabronis. It's very clear who the stars are. And before very long at all, Scott Hall's struggling with substance abuse issues again, I believe, at the time. He's out of the company. The NWO goes through various iterations to include X-Pac and Booker T and even Shawn Michaels briefly. But really, his run back with WWE is a handful of months. And it's sad, but it's also... It raises a question about how different things may have been if Kevin Nash and Scott Hall had come over as part of the Invasion in 2001. If they had actually come over as a double act and as the stars that they were, could we have had a repeat 5 years on of the NWO's impact? I think when they arrived, it was too little, too late. Anyone who was WCW was a lower card talent in the eyes of the WWE fans by the way that the Invasion had been booked, and it was very hard to present the NWO as a genuine, credible threat.
Yeah, that's why Stone Cold had to, defect over to the Alliance and leave them, and they had to give him the entire ECW to prop, and even the way they booked DDP when he came, because a lot of people didn't really know DDP, but then even the way he booked, he tried to do a feud with the Undertaker, but I don't think. But yeah, that post WrestleMania, that instantly, turning Hogan face, I was like, what the hell? Like, what? That didn't make sense to me. Okay, you're bringing over a cancer a month ago, and now all of a sudden you're like, getting rid of the cancer, turning. I think this was the time for me when I kind of stopped watching wrestling, especially after when they turned Hogan face and Hogan won the title a month later from Triple H. Even when they built Triple H coming back from his injury, that big build, and Triple H winning the Royal Rumble and winning the title. And then a month later, he loses to Hogan. And I'm like, what? That does not make any sense to me. So that was a time, I think, for me, I kind of sort of lost a little bit of interest. And that summer, all those weird things with NWO, Scott Hall getting fired. I remember that episode of Raw when Ric Flair, I think, tells the NWO, yeah, I've sent him home. I've fired him. And then Stone Cold picking up his ball and leaving. Yeah, I wasn't feeling it those times.
It's going to be quite a few years, really, until we see Scott Hall again on a grand stage, really, or a grandish stage. It's not the WWE. The next time we really see him is TNA.
Yeah.
I know you were watching the product a lot of this time. I believe he was there as part of the 2010 kind of when Hogan made his big return his big debut with TNA. I believe Hall was there along with Nash and Sean Waltman. I know I've had Eric Young on the show recently. He was talking about what an honor it was to win tag team gold under kind of three bird rules with Hall and Nash, and how much he learnt from working with a pair of them. What are your memories of Scott Hall's time in TNA?
So this was a time sort of like, I think, when a WWF became the only show in town, they were just feeding you whatever the hell. And most of it was pretty garbage, I think, after 2004. And that's when I discovered TNA. It was something new to me. So and then I started seeing all these stars we recognize, from WCW, WWF and whatnot. And then I see Scott Hall. I'm like, whoa, Razor Ramon. I can watch Razor Ramon again. I mean, sadly, he wasn't the same Razor Ramon. He wasn't in a great physical condition. And even at times, we didn't know it at the time about his issues, with substance abuse and all whatnot. But you could kind of feel it now. You're like, oh, something does not feel right. But I remember that night when Hogan debuts, and then you see, it was inevitable. I was like, come on, it's gotta be. They gotta show up. And it was inevitable. And then you see, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall and Sean Waltman in the crowd, and they're trying to get through security. Like, hey, let's get the band back together and stuff like that. Little did they know it was the Hogan show again. It wasn't gonna be no band back and stuff. So yeah, that was pretty much it. And then I think they did an angle. I think the bit about, I heard from Eric Young, the interview you did, the trio stuff they did was pretty interesting. And then they did this bit with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash in the ring. They're having this kind of back and forth when they come across with each other and things. But it kind of just fizzled. So again, not really a great career there in TNA.
With a lot of these stories, you kind of hope that there's going to be this one big moment, this one big kind of comeback match where they kind of go off into the sunset. But with wrestling, that very rarely happens. Mm-hmm. What you get with Scott Hall is this incredible story behind the scenes. So he sinks to some incredible lows, as was very highly documented. And he then goes on to have one of the most remarkable comebacks in wrestling history. With the help of good friends, including DDP, he gets his life back on track. He gets sober. He gets healthy. He refines himself. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, The Resurrection of Jake the Snake Roberts is a beautiful documentary. And just as moving of Jake's story is how much of that shows the changes that Scott Hall underwent with DDP. That all leads to one of the greatest WWE Hall of Fame inductions of all time. Scott Hall inducted solo as Razor Ramon, WrestleMania 30 weekend in New Orleans, enters the WWE Hall of Fame, and with a truly iconic speech, and one that after he passed has been replayed many, many times since. I don't know if you can dust off the toothpick once more and give us that line, Ash.
We're trying to remember. So I think this has become an iconic line, and you constantly see it now on social media. And he just says basically, hard times. He kind of closes it with hard times don't last, but bad guys do. And it's the dreams come true. I'm forgetting it a little bit. I'm like a bit,
I've got it. I'm cheating. I've got it exactly on my screen.
You've got it in front of you, haven't you?
So the last four lines, which are just beautiful. Hard work pays off. Dreams come true. Bad times don't last, but bad guys do.
Bad guys do. Yeah. And that's just so iconic, so amazing. It was truly deserved, so deserving of, I was so happy seeing him because, of all the troubles he's had, and I even actually went on so I attended a audience with Kevin Nash a few years before that. And I think I asked him the question, or one of the people asked him the question about Scott Hall. And Kevin Nash got so emotional answering this question. He told them to turn the cameras off because this event was being recorded. He's like, can you please turn the cameras off because, and he described the condition Scott Hall was in and how he keeps going in and out. He goes into rehab and still having to see then a few years later, Scott Hall, Razor Ramon on that stage, delivering that speech, delivering those lines. It was amazing. It made me so happy. I was like, yes, Razor Ramon is back.
Yeah, and it's not the only time, because Scott Hall occupies rarefied air as a 2-time WWE Hall of Fame. So amidst the crazy world that was COVID, he is a 2020, the NWO is inducted into the Hall of Fame. It's one of those ones that's slightly overlooked because, of course, these were the Thunderdome inductions, which ended up happening in 2021, and they appear on stage at WrestleMania 37, I believe, is when they actually do the full induction. But pretty remarkable. A few years before that, and so this was a year after his Hall of Fame induction, we see, which it stands tall to me as one of like the last big moments for Scott Hall on WWE. We see him and Kevin Nash and Hulk Hogan come to the ring to battle DX in the middle of the Sting versus Triple H WrestleMania 31 match. Remember that one?
Which again didn't make any sense. So it was Triple H versus Sting.
Yep.
I honestly feel that run of Sting in WWE, if I could erase it from my memory in the way he was booked, it didn't make sense, that run in. They're coming in to save Sting, the guy they have had so much heat with, or like so much like their rivalry in WCW. Oh, erase all that. For the sake of WCW, let's go and save Sting. So that was so funny. But yeah, at least we got to see, Scott Hall one more time do something.
We got that moment. Yeah, one of those matches where you just like 10 years on, you're like, what happened? Like, at the time thinking, what happened? But yeah, at least we got that moment, and wrestling is all about the moments, and sometimes you just have to overlook the crazy booking and just be there for the ride. And to see the NWO and DX battling it out, albeit in a nonsensical fashion, was still an iconic WrestleMania moment.
Absolutely. It was.
So we've got to get there eventually. We lose Scott, age 63, in March 2022. He undergoes hip replacement surgery following a fall from home, develops a blood clot, ends up having 3 heart attacks, is placed on life support and passes away a couple of days later on March 14th. Man, I remember hearing this news and just being devastated. I remember doing a post on my social media where I dug out my 1993 Panini sticker album and my double page spread of Razor Ramon, and was just looking back and thinking, wow, this guy's been in my life for so long. And I thought we had so much more of him left. I mean, selfishly, a big part, as I said to you, when we came up with the concept of this, Gone Too Soon, a lot of the guys we're talking about are people that I would give anything to interview and have a conversation with. Scott Hall is someone I would have loved to have spent time speaking with. I know from Mark Mero and speaking with him, developing the book, I know how much Scott meant to him. I know how much in recent years their friendship have flourished. And I know how much Scott had turned his life around. Devastating, given how much we'd seen him go through. Shocked a lot of wrestling fans. Saw a lot of people at the time on the WWE roster and the AEW roster paying their respects with 2 sweets. Got a lot of people talking again about the importance of recovery and the importance of rehab and getting healthy in wrestling. Can you remember where you were when you heard of Razor's passing?
I was following this story on social media, so I was seeing posts from Kevin Nash, just updating us. So I had heard the news. This is what happened. I was hoping, wishing, he comes out of it, I'm like, he's going to pull through. The bad guy is going to pull through this, he's pulled through worse, especially when I learned about, his early life struggles and what kind of caused him to be and have these demons and stuff. People who haven't watched the documentary should go back and watch it. I highly recommend it to learn about, his younger life and why what happened was happened. Yeah, I remember following the story, and then it was within days. It just developed such a quickly, that story, that he was in a coma, and then then I think Kevin Nash was by his side, and I think Sean Waltman might have been as well. And it was so sad to hear the news, and then seeing all those tributes was amazing on WWE, on AEW, paying tribute to the true legend. I think there was a match on AEW. I think it was a women's match, and I think Thunder Rosa, I think it was, she paid tribute to Razor Ramon, I think, in one of her matches, which was so awesome to see. The impact of this guy is, it's forever lasting. And as you said, now Damian Priest is one of the guys I know in NXT I always saw. So very sad it was for me.
Yeah, I mean, Damian Priest has obviously made he has never hidden the fact that he is a Scott Hall guy. He often has the iconic kind of the same design, that kind of outsider design on his outfits. He uses the Razor's Edge. I mean, the similarities between those two is incredible, really, in terms of their build and their style and their speed. Incredibly sad. I mean, his legacy is living on through his son Cody Hall, who is now a professional wrestler in his own right. Was trained by his father and by Kevin Nash, and has wrestled in New Japan. I think one of the big things that comes out of this story with Scott is that he really, really wanted to repair his relationship and be a better father. And in recent years, he managed to achieve that. And you have to thank God that he got that time to kind of turn his life around. We've seen so many wrestling tragedies every year where they never get that moment of redemption. And Scott Hall got his redemption. He got the respect from his peers. He got that final chapter in wrestling, and we have to be thankful for that. But as a fan, I'm deeply sad that we're here doing a Gone Too Soon episode. He would have been 66 now. That's no age at all. And saddened that he's not still with us. But I want to end on a high note. We touched on it earlier. I have a favourite match, which is WrestleMania 10, the ladder match. What's your favourite Scott Hall Razor Ramon match, Ash?
I mean, if you ask most people, the obvious choice would have been WrestleMania 10, the ladder match. But for me, it was a different match, and it was because of a personal connection to this match and the story. And this was his match at SummerSlam 94 when he challenged Diesel for the Intercontinental title. So leading into this, so obviously he was the Intercontinental champion. He got beat by Diesel on Raw due to some outside interference and shenanigans from HBK. So he needed an insurance policy. And the reason also is a connection because the SummerSlam that year was in Chicago at the United Center, which is made famous by the Chicago Bulls. I mean, the card-wise, if people remember, it had an amazing match, Brett and Owen, the cage match, and also people will probably definitely remember this, the Undertaker versus the Undertaker main event. So this was the match on there. So he needed an insurance policy, and he got the services of the late, great Hall of Fame NFL player, the Chicago Bear, the Sweetness himself, Walter Payton. And, just seeing it as a kid, that match, Razor and Diesel. I used to love when both of them used to be in the ring. I used to love Diesel as well. And then HBK doing his shenanigans outside. And then, so that was a great scene, him win the IC title back with the help of Walter Payton. So for me, when I think back, that match, I mean, the ladder match, yeah, always going to be iconic. But for me, it's that match that I remember. I love that match.
Oh man, I love that. That's such a great memory.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing.
Well, I mean, we could spend 100 hours talking about the career of Scott Hall, and the so many wonderful memories we've revisited today. But this has been really special, Ash. And
Yeah.
I say this is our new series, Gone Too Soon. We've got some really big names coming up in the pipeline, but today has been all about Scott Hall. Before we go, this is your time, and I don't know if you could do this in Razor Ramon style, but for anyone who isn't following you, Ash is a great follow on the socials and on YouTube. Plug away where we can find more about the People's Broker. Chico.
So you can find the People's Broker on all social media, but the message I want to give, the best place to follow the People's Brokers on YouTube. If you are someone who's looking to improve their knowledge in property and finance, I've worked on a YouTube channel where I present short videos explaining complicated topics in sort of the simple, easy to understand terms. So go check that out on my YouTube channel and give it a subscribe. And you can follow me in all other social media outlets that are out there.
Damn straight. So that's the People's Broker. We are, of course, Wrestling Life Online. You can find us everywhere. YouTube, Facebook, even on LinkedIn. We're taking over. But yeah, do check us all out. We're going to be back soon for more Gone Too Soon episodes. We've got some more very, very special names coming on. But for now, I'm Ben Ville. My very special co-host has been the People's Broker, the bad guy himself, Ash Jazz. There goes the toothpick. We're out of time. We will see you more very soon for more real talk from real talent.
See ya.